I'm Niels, the founder of the Umbraco project, although I'm just here as a uh, amateur hacker for code production. It's a wonderfully unstressed time of the year, unfortunately, of course, due to Code Garden not happening. But hats off to everyone at Candid Contributions. You're amazing. Yeah, I'm here to talk about a small silly project. I'm actually in my small silly room, which is my very messy workshop where I go to relax and build things that will never be finished. Which is about the same reason why I'm not allowed to be on the core team anymore, because I don't finish things. Um, but one thing that I'm working on is this weird little thing. It's the idea of being able to drink without the effort of actually making drinks. And I was inspired by this idea when I saw this article. I think it was last year on something called Hackster, which is sort of a smart bartender. I don't know if it's smart. I think it's silly that you spend a lot of money on a really crappy bartender rather than going out. But now we live in Corona times and we can't go out, so maybe it would have been smart to have one. So it was this weird build with a lot of instructions on how to do it, and I actually started building it. I don't know if you can see. I have something here. So I started constructing it and thought that was fun. And then I saw this one last year, which is sort of I think it won an award last year for uh, Jury's Choice or something like that at the Umbraco Awards. It's a robotic ice cream maker. So it's basically a in-store robotics maker with real robots that are creating ice creams inside a mold. It's about as stupid and as Black Mirror as something can go. But at least it's powered by Umbraco. So these screens and the options for ice cream is actually managed inside of Umbraco, and I can share the case study here. Then I thought, hey, maybe I could combine this so I could justify all those hours making this one, so I could tell my family Daddy is working. Um, and then I thought maybe we could do something more interesting than that tiny screen down there. And then, as with a lot of wonderful hobby projects, I just started growing and growing and growing. But it's getting very close. So what it is or gonna be is it's gonna be powered by something called a Raspberry Pi. It's a little thing like this, which is a small Linux computer that can run a lot of things. Among other things, it can run Python and really easily. And if you haven't played with Python, you should go. It's so much fun. And then it has these weird ports, which means that you can use your code to control something. So it can kind of combine being a computer and also doing weird automations, like then send a signal to a weird thing like this, which is called a relay, which can then send a signal to these stupid pumps. And then you take some tube and put inside some alcohol, and then you can actually start mixing drinks. So you can sort of 3D print a stupid thing like this and put a funnel in there and then all the tubes in there. It's very stupid, but it's a lot of fun if you don't really have a life and live in the countryside, or if you just really need sometimes to relax and write a little bit of code again. But then I kind of like that something is a bit visual. So what you see on the screen is the current UI for actually getting drinks. So rather than that stupid little screen, it's going to have a touch screen. And rather than this ugly plastic enclosure, I'm learning to make oak enclosures. So it's going to be a nice oak bartender. So this consists of a lot of different boards. So it will be very, very beautiful, and Kim will be happy. So, of course, the reason why I'm talking about all of this is two things, or actually three things. One, the connection with Umbraco, apart from the Umbraco logo in the bottom, is that it's powered by Umbraco, uh, and it's actually powered by Umbraco Heartcore. I tried to make it a sort of a constraint that I should be able to do this without writing any .NET code. So again, the server is essentially going to be a Linux machine, and I'm coding it using my Mac at home. So that's been a lot of fun, and I'll get back into how that works. Number two is just make sure that you do other things than work, and if you actually like, a lot of us have this work because it started out as a hobby of ours. Then, as we saw in the last talk, every now and then just try to code something with no purpose. Our lovely Queen of Denmark said 2 years ago that it's very important to do something that's silly. So she should have never said that, because I've turned it almost into a purpose of life of only doing silly things. But it's such an unstressing thing for me to go into this workshop room and know that I'm only doing things here because I actually have fun. And if I don't have fun, I need to leave the room. So that's number two. Number three is I started this whole weird idea of making things about 2 years ago, of course, inspired by Matt Brailsford. Yep. The problem with being inspired by him is he's so good. But this whole idea of actually, using my hands, I've never used my hands. And when you do that, whether it's working with wood or working with electronics or working with weird Linux powered systems, or even doing electronics, it's actually super difficult. I mean, there's lots of things to learn. So I'm not the most patient kind of person. So I don't want to just make an LED blink. I get bored. So that's why a project like this is good for me. And when I then start asking around in forums and follow YouTubes, one of the things that has really surprised me is whether it's in woodworking communities or Raspberry Pi communities or electronics communities, or even something called Fusion 360, which is a piece of software to design communities, people are incredibly friendly and supportive. And I think we could learn so much about that in our industry. I write a post and I say I have this idea of this bartender. I'm completely new. I can almost not solder, and people are like, "Yeah, go for it." And then nobody says learn to solder first. And I think it's it's the same thing that we have and try to keep in the Umbraco community. That we are friendly, not just as a smart word on some apparel, but it's actually who we are. So, and now a little bit of work, but when we was looking through the list of MVPs, that was also a criteria. Are you a great representative of Umbraco? Are you following the code of conduct? Are you being nice? That's the first requirement to become an MVP in the Umbraco world. So, as experienced people, I think we should be great role model and be super friendly, super welcoming to new people. And we should make software that's super welcoming to new people. Again, I mentioned this product called Fusion 360. This is, by the way, how the bartender might look when it's done, if I'm able to pull it off. This is a type of software that used to cost tens of thousands of pounds a couple of years ago. Now, the company behind it, Autodesk, made it free for makers and for small businesses. And it's so complex as a piece of software, but it's actually relatively easy to learn. So I also found that very inspiring in terms of Umbraco. That sometimes on Twitter, I'm asked, do you want Umbraco to be like Wix or Squarespace? And I'm like, no. We're not a website builder, but why should it be difficult to get started with Umbraco? Or why should it require a lot of developer hours to just make something basic? If we could actually make it possible without a developer or without having to be a .NET developer, more people would start using Umbraco, and we could get even more inspired by other types of people. So that's just another motivation for this talk, this idea, hey, let's keep being welcome, maybe even make it a goal to be more welcoming than we already are, and let's make sure we create some software that are accessible for even more people, whether they are developers or not. And with that, let's talk a little bit about how this is made. I'm not going to go into details about the electronics, but follow my Instagram shameless plug, or I'm finally getting back into blogging, so I'll also start blogging on hartvig.com very soon. So I'll sort of post some things there as well. But I made this using Heartcore, which is this headless CMS. You can use that, or you could use just vanilla Umbraco if you wanted to. And it's quite basic. The idea is that whenever someone clicks the pour drink, it knows about what ingredients and how much of each ingredient and what tube and pump that ingredient is connected to. So that can all be configured. And then, of course, you should be able to have a nice photo and some texts as well. So it makes sense to use Umbraco for that. So the way I've designed it is I have sort of two areas in Umbraco. I have an area for ingredients, and then I have an area for drinks. And it's really simple. I can have an ingredient, and that ingredient has just a slider with a value from 1 to 8, which is what tube is this ingredient connected to, because I have 8 pumps. So that's it. And then I have a drink where I can flag it to be alcohol-free. I have this idea that the bartender should work all the time, but then only show alcohol-free drinks until a certain time. And then we could have it at the office. I think that could be funny. And then, of course, the drink has a photo and a description. And then I'm using nested content for the ingredients. And it's, again, super, super simple. I have an element type, which is a combination of a drink. And in my nested content, I can just have up to 6 different ingredients that can be mixed. And an ingredient combination is, again, very simple. It's a content picker where I can choose an ingredient. So the start node is where all the ingredients are, and then a slider with the amount of centiliter. And I don't know what that is in US. I think 3 centiliters is about an ounce. But so if I want to configure my bartender, I have these different ingredients. Of course, the most important being a Campari, and it's connected to tube 6. Then I have my drinks. So we could create a new drink. Let's create a gin and tonic. And let's add some ingredients. So I guess it's gin, lots of it, and some tonic. Dum, dum, dum. And more of that. And then, mandatory to make Kim happy. Kim, our dear CEO, he has more than 40 different gins in his cottage in Sweden. Then a nice photo for the drink, and then we'll publish this one. And if everything works, then my dear bartender now has a drink, gin and tonic. And when I click this button, it will send an AJAX request to something called a Flask server, which is a Python thing, which can then know about the different tubes and how much. So very simple. What's kind of funny about this is how simple it is. So the configuration of this is quite basic. And even if you're not a .NET developer, because I'm using the headless version of Umbraco, it's super easy for me to get the data without writing any code. So in Heartcore, there's also this browser. So let's say that I want all content of drinks. I can verify that this content query works. And then all I need to do is call this URL. And if you're using something like this for the first time, you have no idea why does it say no headless cats for you. And that's because all the content is distributed on a CDN, and this one doesn't know about my bartender project. So I actually need to send a header like this with the alias of my project. So once I've done that, for instance, using Insomnia or something like that, I can sort of see that I get all my content, and it automatically gets all the related content. So I'm using nested content, so I actually get the relations in that nested content. I don't have to look up a lot of things. So to put all this together in vanilla JavaScript is super easy. I found a JavaScript library called Swiper, which sort of has this touch-enabled gallery or slide swiping feature. Then I am proudly a Stack Overflow developer, so I wanted to do this in vanilla JavaScript, so I shamelessly went on Stack Overflow, found some source code to get some data from another URL. The only thing I changed was adding this header because I need to do that. Then I load the drinks, and then for each drink that's in my content, I create a slide element, put the image as the background, and of course we support those focal points. So it's always the drink that's in focus. And then just the name of the drink, the descriptions, and then I initialize this Swiper plugin, and that's basically it. So if we're talking about making Umbraco more accessible, what's kind of cool about this is that at no point I've been talking about .NET code, not talking about installing Umbraco or learning to deploy Umbraco or anything. I've gone to a sort of a SaaS service. I've done the implementation on the Umbraco side without any code. I don't need to know about how I create a REST API or web API in .NET, even though it's easy if you know how to. You just need to know something about .NET. And then I can be here on my Mac, write a couple of lines of JavaScript, really stealing, copy pasting a couple of lines of JavaScript, and then I actually have the UI for my bartender. And when it works on my Mac, it's also super easy to then deploy that Python web server to my Raspberry Pi. And I know that the resolution of my Raspberry Pi display is 800 pixels, so it's also going to fit nicely on the screen, and the Raspberry Pi can work in kiosk mode. So to me, this is like, have fun. Let's make sure to be friendly. Also, people who are new to Umbraco, and let's make sure that anyone can be able to use Umbraco, whether they want to create crazy, advanced .NET powered site with lots of integrations and load balancing and all that, or just want to have fun and make a simple slider in JavaScript.